Welcome back, everyone, to the finale of this series, this theme. So, Ten Commandments, we are here on the last one. We're going to be covering commandments number 9 and 10 together because they go hand in hand. This one's all about thou shalt not covet. So, another episode, olive tree concepts. Now I just want to make it clear for some people because there's like two kind of little debates in terms of like the order of the Ten Commandments. Some people say that like agree that the first and second commandment are one commandment that we touched upon, like where it says that you shall have no other gods before me, and then the whole you will not make carved images, you will not idolatry and all that stuff, right? I personally think that's kind of goes hand in hand, like it's just one big commandment, but some people separate those two, and then the last ones 9 and 10, the debate is also like if it's just one commandment because it's talking about coveting but like different aspects of coveting, or if it's like one thing or two separate things. All in all, doesn't really matter as long as we know the premise of all of what the Ten Commandments are. They all remain the same, whether you want to categorize which one is one, which one is two separate ones, or whatever. But that's a big reason why I chose to do 9 episodes in this whole aspect of the Ten Commandments and not necessarily 10, just because people are dumb and they want to nitpick the minor things, but the whole point is to cover all of the subject of what is the Ten Commandments, and that's what God has led me to do. So now that we are on the 9th episode, the last episode, just so that there's no miscommunication or anything that's been overlooked, we're just going to conjoin what I believe is the 9th and 10th commandment and wrap it all up into one single thing. So, thou shalt not covet. Reason being why, I'm going to read it, but reason being why I think it's two different things is just because the list of things that are spoken on in this aspect, I feel like there's two separate points that are hitting in terms of coveting, right? And why they are, coveting in general is wrong and bad, right? But it's like two separate things that are being coveted, not necessarily just all in one, right? So let's get into it. Exodus chapter 20 verse 17 says, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. So what I think is separate in that is the first part A. It's you shall not covet your neighbor's house, right? So this to me is more on the aspect of the physical material things, house, possessions, in the sense of like materialistic possessions, right? And then part B is separate because it's saying you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male servant, female servant, ox, donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's, right? So that part has more to do with like, especially the spouse part, has a lot to do with lust and adultery. And the other things like the male servant or female servant and like the animals, those have more to do with like the covenant of marriage and like livestock belongings, like animals. And I know, this whole servant thing is like the big debate of all that stuff. It's not a slave, you know. Um, a servant is very different from a slave, especially being that a servant is like a worker, you know. We see that plenty still in today's modern times, you know. Very wealthy, rich people have, um, you know, kind of treated like a business, I guess you can say, where they have people who help taking care of the house, taking care of the family, taking care of, you know, crops and cleaning and all that, stuff that goes into it. I mean, I wouldn't really know. I'm not like a multi-millionaire or billionaire. I don't have a servant. But that's more what it's implying to. So it has more to do with the aspect of material things. So like house, cars, money, jewels, right? That's like part A. The physical money, riches aspect. And then the second part has more to do with the abundance and provisions of things of life. Um, you know, people who help you, your, spouse, your husband or your wife. And then the aspect of the animals, it's not used as much, it's not as common at least nowadays. But animals held a very big like weight, and it was a very big part of wealth because at that time especially there weren't cars and tractors and you know power tools and all of these things. There were some hand tools, but the use of animals, especially like oxes, donkeys, bulls, horses, goats, sheep, and all that, were to tending to the fields, even used as animal sacrifices, and all of these things. So there's a whole greater context of things that are important specifically for that time, not as much used for today. If you were going to really like play it out for the average like modern day person, because we don't have maids. Not everybody has like maids and servants, or like at-home nurses or at-home doctors, or things like that. Not everybody has that kind of luxury. But what it's really speaking to at the core of it is what is like spoken about in Genesis and the fall of man. It's the lust of the eyes, right? The lust of the flesh and the pride of life, right? So these two aspects of coveting have a lot to do with those parts: the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, right? And the pride of life, right? So when we're looking at coveting and why coveting is, a big issue, it has a lot to do with greed, with lust, and with envy, right? And it's like this very obsessive and like stronghold desire of wanting something that isn't yours. So let's go with part A first, the aspect of not coveting your neighbor's house, right? The whole point on that is really important for you to be like satisfied with what you have, being content with what you have. Maybe you might not be super financially well off, You don't have a lot of riches, a lot of, material things, a lot of possessions of that nature, right? You don't have a lot of cars and clothes and, big house mansions and all of these things like that. And if you don't, like, it's okay that you don't. It's natural for humans to want, to desire to, you know, do better, want better, better substance of life and sustainability, and you just want better quality of things, luxury of things, and all that kind of stuff. This is a natural, like, human desire, wanting the betterment of life, right? But it's one thing to want it in a healthy or organic kind of way, where you're striving to do better, leveling up in life. You're working to progressively, like, you know, make your situation better. And you're not living a life where you're envious, jealous, or like obsessed with other people's things, but you're more of internally focused on what's better for you, what's better for your family, and all that, right? And everybody has a different perspective on that. So it's very important to really look inward in this kind of thing and really recognize, like, what is actually better for you and what is actually good for you might not necessarily be the same standard for somebody else, right? For example, there are people who love, like, the big city life, right? Like, and we see tons of big cities, like examples of big cities around the world. We have places like LA, New York City, Chicago. You have places like, Sydney, Australia, Dubai, Singapore. There's like all of these famous places around the world. Paris, London. There's just this big metropolitan city. You got the big buildings. You have, like, everybody, like, all kind of close together, and you have all these extravagant things and restaurants and bars and city life and all of this stuff that, like, interests people who like that, right? And then you'll find people who have, like, these mega houses in those areas, or like big stylish luxury apartments and duplexes and all of these, like, crazy cool things, right? And for some people, that's their desire. That's what, like, they enjoy. That's what they like, and that's their goal, right? That's something that they desire. They strive for. They work for, and they like that city life, and they want that kind of city life, And by all means, if that's what you like and that's what's good for you, then you do that. You pursue that, and you don't necessarily need to have, like, a multi-million-dollar, like, massive apartment thing that's like 2, 3, 4 floors, suite, all that kind of stuff, right? But being in that context, living in that city life, that's what you like, right? So however many millions of people condensed in that kind of thing, that's your goal. But for other people, they like living in the country, right? They like living far out. They want their view and vision of success and, peace and wealth and riches and all that is having a big plot of land far away from everybody. You don't want neighbors close to you. You want, a big farm. You want animals, or maybe not even just like a farm or animals, but you just want just a big plot of land where it's quiet, it's calm, you're surrounded by nature, trees, plants, fruits, vegetables, all that kind of stuff like that. You don't want, like, houses close side by side, like neighbors all close and stuff. You want big space, spread out. You don't want to be super close to the city, super close to, like, whatever. You like the distance. You don't mind the drive. You don't mind the commute and all that kind of stuff, So just that an aspect, city life versus country life, it's a big difference. It's two totally different lifestyles. So if you're a person who loves the city life, but you're living in the country, right? You're going to think that because I live in the country, your perspective, your worldview on it, you're gonna think that, you know, you might be poor, or you're not living well, or this you know sucks, and this bothers me, and all this and that, whatever. Or vice versa, you might be in the city and you hate the city, and your dream is to be somewhere out far away in the country, you know, solo dolo and all that. So when you're looking within, that's all good, you know. You need to be in a place where it suits you best, you know. And God knows these things. And God's gonna, you know, direct you to what he knows is best for you, and where you'll thrive best, where you'll, you know, your calling, your growth, and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's something where we need to pay attention to. And it's like that phrase, like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Now, where things start to become dangerous is when you become in this like a covetous kind of like pursuit, right? You become like obsessive and compulsive over other people's things, and it doesn't matter your situation, it doesn't matter where you're, like, you're never satisfied, right? Even if you're like, we see it a lot. I mean, you see it all across the board, whether you're poor or whether you're rich. But examples we'll see in like movies or TV shows, or even like on the news, like real things happening, where the person could have a lot of things, but they're never satisfied, right? And they just want more things. Like, they almost become like hoarders and compulsive, or they just want more things. They need to buy something every day. Just want, they wear, like, they buy, you know, a new fit, like new clothes, and they wear it one time, and then they're like, no, I can't wear it again. I need to always buy something new, and just more and more and more, just consume, right? And this like consuming mindset, this coveting mindset, obsession over, like, I need to be better than others, I need to have more than others, and you're constantly like wanting more of these materialistic things. And you genuinely, like, people who are like messed up like that, like, they genuinely get angered and pissed off when there are people who they think are better than them, who have more money than them, who have a better house than them, who have more, you know, clothes and more riches than them. Like, it genuinely bothers them, and they become like angered by it. And then instead of like being happy or positive towards that person, and desiring more success for them, and being like, oh wow, congratulations for, you know, achieving that, they start to wish their demise. You know, they're so angered at them and pissed at them. They're like, no, I hate that they have more than me, I hate that they're better off than me, like, I want them to be, you know, to suffer, I want them to be destroyed, and all that stuff. And that's what like the covetous lens does, and that's very bad, obviously, and very dangerous, because it's very evil. This part where you're feeling, where you're never satisfied, and it's just not good enough, right? That's something, that's like an identity crisis, you know. That's a soul issue. It has nothing to do with the material things, because no matter how many riches or materialistic things you get, you'll never be satisfied, right? It's just an endless black hole. It's a void, a pit that's never going to be filled, right? So that desire can only be filled with Jesus. The only way that will be healed is by Jesus, right? Because most likely you have some kind of deep, like, psychological trauma, or like a childhood trauma or something, where you felt like you didn't have enough, and you just obsessed with needing more things because you have this like poverty mindset or whatever. Or you're very spoiled and bigoted, and you just like think that everything belongs to you, and you feel like you have this God complex, like, I'm better than everyone, and I deserve, and I need to have more than everybody else, and nobody can be better than me, and nobody can have more than me. and this, that, and so on and whatever, right? So that, I believe, is all the things that fall into part A, right? Of commandment number 9, I would say, is the materialistic coveting of things, right? Now, part B, where I think is like the commandment 10, is where it falls into the part where it's like, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor male servant, female servant, ox or donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's, right? Now, these things, right, the first part I feel has more to do with the pride of life. I mean, the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, right? So these are more, the physical things, physical material things, and like this God complex kind of thing, like this pride obsession, this dominant kind of spirit, right? Now, the part B of it, I feel, plays more into the lust of the flesh, right? The desires, the carnal desires of things, right? Where especially the aspect of the coveting your neighbor's wife, or in this case, wife or husband, because like there's men who can desire other men's wives, and there's women who can desire other women's husbands. Like you want what you can't have, kind of thing, right? And that has a lot to do, I feel, more with the lust of the flesh part, because it's very carnal. It's very like sexual based kind of coveting. It's very lustful type of coveting, right? Where you want to take what's from somebody else and you want to have it for your own, right? So even in the aspect of the servants part and the animals part, these are living beings, right? These are living people and living animals. Part A has more to do with like inanimate, objects, inanimate things like jewels and riches and houses and clothes and all that stuff. Like these things, they're not alive. They're just like material substance kind of things, right? They come and they go, they wither and rust and all that, right? But the people aspect and the animals aspect, it's a whole other kind of thing. These are like almost, for many of it, it's like covenant contractual kind of relationships, right? These are like binding things, and it's more than just a physical kind of aspect to it, but there is this soul tie, this spiritual bond that comes from these other kind of relationships, right? And this is a far more serious thing in my perspective. I feel like it's something that's a lot more weighty, right? And far more severe in the line of coveting, right? Because marriage, for example, is a very holy and sacred thing, you know? So, especially if God is the one who like put the man and the woman together, like he blessed that marriage, he like guided those two to be together. Any form of like adultery in that is a wicked abomination to God, right? So a person who's willingly desiring to break a marriage because they're wanting to seduce the husband or the wife, and they're trying to like take, take a spouse from the other, that's diabolical. That's absolutely evil, and they fantasize about it, and they desire and lust over that, and they just like, oh, it's like some people will even have like this sexual power, the sexual like dominance of wanting to like break a relationship because they want, it like, what's the way, like it makes them in a way feel good in a very wrong kind of way, because they feel empowered on the fact that like of their beauty or of their seduction and all that, and they feel that they have some form of stronghold power over somebody because they were able to seduce a husband or a wife into infidelity and all that. That breaks so many commandments, and it's just all twisted and messed up, right? Now, and the aspect of like maids or servants, or you can say even co-workers and stuff, like, because they're living beings, there's uh you might not have like a marital type of relationship, but you have some form of relationship with them, whether it's friendship, and there's this proximity, this familiarity that comes from that, right? So wanting to desire, and that like stealing people away from like corruption and all that stuff, like we see a lot of examples of that too. And I think it's very unethical, it's very immoral, right? And things that involve the soul and the spirit, the wound that it makes is far deeper, right? And it's a lot more complicated, it's a lot messier, right? And it really is a lot more hurtful. Like, somebody steals your car, or steals your purse, or steals your watch or something, like, yeah, you can get really mad at it and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, like, you can always buy a new one, right? But like, stealing a person, even though that's like a wild like sentence to say, but like it's what it feels like taking a friendship away, taking like a coworker away, a good worker. Like, we see a lot in the business world that happens, a lot of shady business, and like, was a CEO or CFO of this place, or like, you know best manager in one place, and all of a sudden they got duped by a secret contract behind the scenes, and they offered more money, or they offered a better deal, and blah blah blah, this and that, and they kind of just like took them out, and it feels very disrespectful, you know and that kind of coveting, I feel like it hurts more. It has a lot more potential of bringing some kind of trauma, right? And bringing some kind of like, even like a demonic kind of infiltration can happen from of that. you know it can really bring some kind of like demonic attack, and spiritual warfare kind of thing, and it can really mess you up a lot more. Even the aspect of like animals, um, a lot of people have really strong like connections to animals, whatever it is, birds, cats, dogs, horses, whatever. Like, you create a bond with these beings, and God made animals for people to have relationship with, and they are help and all of these things. But it's like, there's a lot of things go into like comfort and joy and laughter and peace and all of these things, the kindness and gentleness of certain animals with their owners and all that. So that's like it's a real thing, like, it's a real bond. It's even used, like, animals are used so much in even like therapy, helping, like, there you can, with dogs there's therapy, like people use with horses, and all, there's so many things, right? So that's another aspect. Like, sure, it might not be the same level as like a human bond or relationship, but there's this aspect too where, like, it's like animals don't judge you, they don't speak ill of you, gossip about you, and all these things. So there's like a certain kind of level of trust and comfort, and like even dependency that people can create with animals, right? Especially in this time where it's more than just um you know a, a pet of leisure, but these are like animals that are working the fields, that are, it's part of your livelihood, it's part of the way that you're literally surviving. It's a big portion of helping with the crops, with the livestock, with tilling the soil, with building even You know, the strength that oxes and bulls and these like strong animals have that can carry mass amounts of lumber, mass amounts of like, you know, whatever that's needed in ranching and farm work and construction things. Like, it's a whole different kind of bond, and it's literally like, it's a huge dependency of what it brings into the family, like the living of the family. So even that, it was taken so serious back in those times because of how much more it meant in terms of the provision, the blessings from God into the family, versus just, you know, the human enjoyment of having animals around, right? So, why is coveting so serious? In both of these aspects, you know, I explain why I feel the difference between those two and all that. But regardless of whether it's materialistic things or whether it's, you know, marriage relationship or friendship relationship or like servant co-worker relationship, all that kind of stuff, right? Even the animals relationship, regardless of the categories of these things, the reality is that humans are made with a physical body, with a soul, and with a spirit, right? So not everything is always like a spiritual thing, right? But some ways, somehow, right? Everything affects us in a spiritual soul kind of way, because there's no way to physically separate the soul and the spirit from the physical body, right? The only time that happens is like when you die, right? So as long as you're alive and you're breathing, these things are always intertwined, right? So the danger of coveting is whether it's coveting materialistic things or coveting legitimate relationships and, you know, all that kind of stuff, it somehow still affects your spirit and your soul, right? And to have this obsessive compulsive desire, this greed, this lust, this envy involved with coveting, it all goes to the root of showing that there is some severe kind of soul issue. There's a real heart issue. There's a real like traumatic issue in the psyche of the person, in the mind of the person, right? In the heart of the person. Like, and it'll cause people to steal, to be thieves and all that stuff, and that's very bad, you know. Talked about it before, like, nobody likes thieves, nobody likes when people steal, right? So to covet, it's like a far more extreme version of stealing. It's a far more extreme version of lusting, of greed, and, you know, and all of these, like, it's your carnal desires on maximum, right? And your spiritual desires like on maximum, right? So the root of why it's so dangerous and why it's so bad is because most likely if you are in some kind of if you find yourself in some issue of having like a coveting issue, right, it really goes to show that there's some deep rooted problem within, and nothing on the outside will ever fix it, will ever heal it, will ever make it better. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how much men or women you sleep with. It doesn't matter how many friends or acquaintances you have. It doesn't matter how much power and influence you have. It doesn't matter how many houses and cars and clothes and and the luxuries of life. It doesn't matter if you own a farm with 1,000,000 animals. It doesn't matter how much you have. You will never be satisfied. And that desire will never be satiated. And that is extremely dangerous, because you'll spend your entire life chasing after something, hunting after something, desiring something that will never fill that void, no matter what. So this is like next level kind of internal issue, right? So this is something that's so important that needs to be dealt with. Because if it isn't, like, you're screwed, right? And the only one who can deal with it is Jesus. The only one who can fill that void, because that void is so big that the only being that is big enough to fill that void is God himself, because God is infinite and God is never ending, and his love is never ending. It's unparalleled, it's unmatched. His love is, agape, and it's the highest standard of all of existence. So only God can fill that void. Only Jesus can fill that void. Only the Holy Spirit can fill that void. In Hebrews chapter 13, verses 4 through 6, it states, "Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you, nor will I ever forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" I think this is like the best way to just end this episode and end this series. And the Hebrews explains it clearly and perfectly that no matter what you're going through, no matter what's happening in your life, there is only one answer, and his name is Jesus Christ. It's God Almighty. It's the Holy Spirit, right? Only the Lord is your helper. And only he can take away all fear of everything in the world and give you never-ending love. Only God will be there for you no matter what. He will never leave you, and he will never forsake you. He will never abandon you. He will never reject you, and he will never leave you alone, because he is always there with you, no matter what. And no matter what you do, his grace and his mercy and his faith and hope and joy and peace and kindness and goodness and gentleness and all that is who he is will always be there for you, and will always be chasing you and consuming you with his love, right? So there's nothing that any man can do to you. There's nothing any man can do to hurt you. There's no lie. There's nothing that men can do, humans, not just men, the male, like human beings, male or female. There is no human that can take that away from you. There's no human that can bring fear. There's nothing that the devil can do. There's nothing that demons can do. There's nothing that they can do that will ever separate you from the love of God. So be confident, be bold in that, have that conviction and that understanding, knowing that, man, God really loves me, and no matter what, he'll always love me. I have to always choose him, because he chooses me, and he wants me, and he wants me to delight in him. So yeah, thanks for all the support. I hope this really edifies you and just brings life to you. And I'll be praying and seeing what the next theme series will be. Love you guys.